Hello and welcome to the last word on Spurs and to another transfer update. It's been a few days of a lot, but very little actually happening in the world of Tottenham with incomings. We're going to talk a lot about Morgan Gibbs-White and the latest on that one as Nottingham Forest continue to threaten legal action against Tottenham over what they consider to be an illegal approach to the player. We're also going to talk about stadium naming rights. Yes, can you believe it? 6 years after the opening of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it looks like we have some movement on naming rights and some investment in the club as well. But before we do get into all of those stories, let's go around the house and introduce you to our panel. We've got Mitch Fretton back on Last Word on Spurs. Mitch, how are you getting on today?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Matt. It's been a while since I've been on, so it's nice to be able to come on when at least there's something interesting happening around the club as well, even though I think a lot of us are pretty frustrated at the moment. But yeah, just really happy to be on with a great panel and a great host as yourself, and looking forward to getting stuck into everything.
To have you. We've also got Connor on the show. Connor, how are you getting on today?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you. Really looking forward to jumping into this. As always with Tottenham, it's never boring, is it? So, yeah, looking forward to making my second appearance on the show.
We are, of course, delighted to have you back as well. And it's quite a show, Gary, to make your debut, because like I said, there's a lot of complicated legal, contractual matters to get into regarding Morgan Gibbs-White. But first of all, welcome to the show. We're delighted to have you on the panel this evening. And how are you looking forward to it?
Big fan of the show. So yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Well, let's not waste any more time and let's get straight into it. Let's get up to date on the Morgan Gibbs-White saga. So, like I said, there's plenty going on, but without really too much movement. To give you just a quick recap of the last 5 days of what's been going on with the player. On Thursday, Tottenham informed Nottingham Forest of their intent to trigger Gibbs-White release clause of £60 million. Less than 24 hours later, in typical Tottenham fashion, news broke that Forest considered the deal to be off, as they claimed Tottenham made an illegal approach to sign the player. It is also reported that they felt Tottenham's knowledge of the exact number in the player's release clause was evidence of a confidentiality breach. To today, and Gibbs-White has trained as normal with Nottingham Forest on Monday and Tuesday. Forest have written to Tottenham and Morgan Gibbs-White's agent, putting them on, quote, legal notice and warning that they are considering legal action over what they consider to be an illegal approach and breach of confidentiality. Forest are adamant that the player is going nowhere, and that's according to Rob Dorset at Sky Sports. Let's take a breath, Mitch. It's not an easy saga to wrap our heads around, as I've said, but what are your thoughts as we record here on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I mean, you say it very well there. It's not an easy saga, but it wouldn't be Tottenham if there wasn't some sort of drama after having what was looking like a fantastic 48 hours in the transfer window. Yeah, I think a lot of us are frustrated, like I said a minute ago, because the news breaks, and when it breaks so quickly and out of the blue like that, you get that sort of adrenaline rush. We've just brought Kudus through the door, and then all of a sudden, bam, Morgan Gibbs-White straight away, due to have his medical. And then I think most of us were expecting an announcement on the Friday night. So, in typical Tottenham fashion, there was a hiccup. And now we are being tested in terms of patience. And certainly a lot of us are frustrated because I just don't think many people know to certain extent what is actually going on behind closed doors in terms of the legal stuff and where the clubs are at, really, because I think Spurs have been very, very quiet on the situation. It's been Forest making all of the noise. But all we can do is just hope for a resolution very quickly. What we've seen today says that Frank wants him for the pre-season tour when we head out to Asia. So he's got about a week or so to do that, and hopefully we can get it over the line, because I think he'd be a fantastic signing. And my opinion is that he's a signing worth waiting for, even if this is dragging out and starting to annoy people. I think he's that type of player that if we can still get him, then it will be worth it at the end of it.
I think that's a really important point there, because Tottenham are said to still be confident that the transfer will go through, and they accepted straight away last Friday that a delay was inevitable, with Forest owner Evangelos Marinakis having another, what I'm going to call, moment, because he's had a few of those in the past as well. And we do run the risk of potentially waiting too long if this turns into a dragged out process, which will have a negative domino effect on our entire transfer window. Now, we have suggestions that Forest have already lodged their complaint with the Premier League too, with the Premier League not giving a timeline for when the case could be concluded. Gary, we'll come to you next. Where do you see this one going in the next few days?
Well, I don't think we've probably done anything illegal. Initially, as soon as I heard that potentially the deal was off, was Daniel Levy's just lowballed him on a figure and just stumbled across the release clause, because I don't think he would do anything illegal. He doesn't seem that type of businessman at all. That was my initial thought. He's just tried to lowball to try and get him in the door and stumbled across a 60 million release clause that he didn't know about. Equally, that there's a release clause in the contract. It's there. It's not going to be Tottenham that's tried to find it. I think the only place that's probably come from would have been the agent, and I do believe that it just goes through. I think Forest are just kicking up some fuss. Seems to be what the owner does when things doesn't go his way. I've seen it on a number of occasions. But if he's trying to suggest that in the 29 transfers he did last season or the year before, that not once did they speak to an agent before making an offer, he's absolutely, insert the words. I expect it to probably happen, I hope, by the end of the week. Last week I was on another podcast. I just threw his name out there as someone I'd love to see. I never expected us to be able to sign him. I think he's a fantastic player. But I think that definitely it'll go through. Maybe he might pull a Kudus and start putting up a little bit of a fuss at training, and then the deal goes through quicker. But I fully expect it to be done. I would hope by Monday.
I certainly hope you're right. The general consensus is that the deal will go through, and I think it's going to become more and more agreed upon that Marinakis has an ulterior motive for his rather inexplicable actions. The first possibility, Connor, is that he wants more money from Tottenham, and it's a common practice for a buying club to offer above a release clause to convince the selling club to agree to more favorable terms, usually in the shape of installments rather than an upfront fee. Although there are reports that Gibbs-White release clause actually will be paid over 2 years as what is in his contract. The second possibility is that Forest are maybe just trying to save face, and there were reports straight away when this ball started rolling that they didn't want to be seen to lose one of their best players without putting up a fight, especially after Anthony Elanga completed his move to Newcastle United as well. The third possibility, and in my opinion the least likely one, is that they're trying to convince Gibbs-White to sign a new contract that removes that release clause, which then gives Marinakis and Forest the control and the power within these negotiations with Tottenham, which is reportedly what they've actually been trying to do with the player over the last 12 months. If you put yourself in Marinakis's shoes for a moment, is there a realistic way that you can see him actually winning this battle?
I don't think so. Look, I think it's on those points you raise, it's a common misconception, I think, amongst fans that release clauses always have to be paid completely up front. And actually, it's fairly common for that clause to set out, that there will be installments. There are obviously exceptions to that where they are triggered up front. And I know in Spain, for example, that is quite often the case where you have to pay all of the cash up front. But who knows what was in Gibbs-White's contract? And I think, to me, what it sounds like has happened is because, part of me is like, well, what's the point in a release clause if no one can find out about it, right? What's the point of having it in the contract? But I suspect it's probably a legal technicality point that, before disclosing that release clause to an external club, Gibbs-White or his agent had to tell Nottingham Forest that he was going to tell someone else what it was. And perhaps they haven't followed those steps through. And I suspect that Marinakis is going to try and make some case around that. But I suppose the point is, how do you prove that? It's really difficult to prove. Levy could even just make the argument, and I don't know whether the number that's been reported is 60 million, not anything more specific than that. That was just our deemed market value for it, right? That could be the argument that we could make. I think most of us would probably say 60 million seems a fairish price for Gibbs-White. So, look, I think I suspect this is Marinakis throwing his toys out the pram a little bit. I think he's probably angling to save a bit of face with the Forest fans after selling Elanga to sort of show we've done everything we can, and hoping that Tottenham will throw a bit of money at it to make it go away, so that it gets a bit more than 60 million. But look, I think it's really difficult for Forest. I'm not a lawyer, but based on my limited knowledge of law, I think it's difficult for Forest to, one, prove what they're accusing, and two, actually quantify any sort of loss as a result, because now everyone knows that release clause anyway, and whoever's going to come in and buy him, if it isn't Tottenham, can just do the same thing, you would think. So yeah, I can't see how Forest win this case, but it's just painful for us as football fans who are impatient because we want Gibbs-White holding up that Tottenham shirt.
And I think it's typical Tottenham fashion that it's the one transfer where we actually moved very quickly. It was last Thursday afternoon that we heard we wanted him, and then by Thursday evening we got the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. So the one that we actually could have got done quite quickly was taken away from us. I watched an interesting video. Former Crystal Palace chairman Simon Jordan discussed this ordeal on TalkSport, and the former chairman of Palace, who's been involved in a lot of these situations in the past, and he made a key point, something that I imagine we all know already, but it's that this illegal approach that Forest accused Tottenham of is a very common practice within football. And he actually made reference quite funnily to Daniel Levy doing the very same thing to him with Wayne Routledge back in the day. He also raises the question of who this complaint that Nottingham Forest is actually against in the case of the confidentiality issue. Is it Tottenham, or is it the player's agent who likely spread the word of the release clause, as we've said? He also explained how there isn't a standard release clause, which I think that some fans have overlooked recently, that it's not just a case of here's the money, give us the player. He said it depends on the structure of the agreement. Each agreement is unique. We understand there's a release clause in the player's contract, but we don't understand the caveats of that. Triggering the release clause doesn't give you a God-given right to do what you want. You have to have a degree of consultation and a degree of agreement with the selling club. Just offer a bit of balance there and suggest that, while I agree with you, Connor, that I think once the release clause is paid, look, maybe Forest find a way to get a little bit extra money out of Tottenham. Maybe they find a way to get some compensation, or maybe it is just a PR thing where they're trying to save face with their fans a little bit. But if that doesn't add even more to the confusion, more confusion to the mix for you guys, I want a quick fire yes or no on if you think this deal will go through. I put a poll out on my Twitter just before we came live. There was 2,500 votes, and 75% of people do think it will go through. Mitch, yes or no? Do you think Morgan Gibbs-White will be a Tottenham player at the end of the window?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes, 100%.
Connor?
Yes.
Well, make it a full house. I wasn't confident we get the full house on that one, but I'm glad to hear we all have that belief in this. So let us know in the live chat as well. There's over 3,500 of you watching live right now. Let us know if you think Morgan Gibbs-White will be a Tottenham player by the end of the window. But let's move on to some more positive news and talk about the further rumours about potential investment in Tottenham Hotspur. Friend of the show, Paul O'Keefe, shared an update on Friday. He said there will be investment as well as a large sponsorship deal for Tottenham. And this is where Lee McQueen will be sitting, ticking off the tweets and the stories that he shared with us in the past. The changes will see a management reshuffle as well as new roles. Likely Levy stays, but potentially in a different or reduced and perhaps even non-football related role. I can hear the screams from all around as people celebrate that one. Last word on Spurs regular Sami Mokbel at the BBC also claimed that the current spending on transfers is more likely to be the result of an injection of cash from owners ENIC, who are understood to have kept a closer eye on club operations in recent months rather than any external investment. Mitch, we have two things there that I think Tottenham fans have been begging for and craving for the last 20-something years. One is Levy in a reduced or non-football role. The other is investment from ENIC. Do you see the club following through on this?
Do you know what? If you'd have asked me that question 6 to 12 months ago, I would have given you a resounding no. But now my opinion's very much changed on it, just because we've already started to see the effects of this sort of reshuffle. So obviously Donna Cullen, people like Scott Munn leaving the club, Vinay coming in as a new CEO. And I actually think he's probably one of the guys pulling all of the strings and making all of these positive impacts across the club. It could all be linked to outside investment coming in, and they're sort of starting to phase things out. But I do see the club following through from it. I think it's very obvious, and you don't need to be oblivious to the world of football and the Spurs fan base to know that I want to be careful saying the majority, but a big portion of the Spurs fan base have been against Daniel Levy and his heavy involvement in the football side of things for a number of years now. And I don't think too many people will argue that he's a good businessman and he's done, the typical comments, done really well with the stadium. He knows how to get a good deal in the transfer market, even if he's very frustrated in getting it done. But that should be perhaps the extent of his role, and the football side of things should very much be separate to that. So I think if that does happen, it paves a very clear pathway for Spurs to move forward as a club, because we've got to be sat there looking at how we can take the club to the next level now. We've ended that trophy drought, put the Premier League season of last year behind us, because you would hope that's a very, very irregular occurrence. How are we now going to bridge the gap to the teams that are above us? The Chelseas, the Arsenals, the Liverpools, the Cities. How are we going to bridge that gap? And I do think Daniel Levy taking a step back is a big part of that. How long it will take and whether it will fully happen, we might not know. I don't know. The club have been very transparent with their communication since Vinay come in. So I do hope that they continue in that light, because I think a lot of fans appreciate being told exactly what's going on. And we're not necessarily used to it. So it's been quite surprising, but also quite a positive breath of fresh air as well. But yeah, I can see him following through, and hopefully that just takes us onwards and upwards as a club in general.
I think I could definitely sit here for quite a while and praise the work that Vinay has done since he came in. The gates that we've seen back in N17 today as well. He's already had a lot of small wins, which when you look at the pure disaster that Tottenham have been over the last however many years, the small wins actually mean a lot, but the potential big wins that could be on the way now are going to be huge for a football club. And it was a very odd summer where we go from winning the Europa League to sacking a manager that a lot of fans didn't want sacked. There was a very, very odd mood, but it was a very good opportunity to kind of get that fan base really back on side. I think he's doing a fantastic job in that. I just want to dive a little bit more into the naming rights for the stadium. I'll come to you on this one, Gary. Two more friends of the show, Ben Jacobs and Matt Law, offered more information about what that large sponsorship deal might be. Ben Jacobs said last week that Spurs are close to finalising a stadium naming rights deal with a Saudi entity as the front runner. And some F1 fans, Mitch, might recognise Aramco, which you see around a lot of the F1 circuits, and sponsors of Aston Martin as well. He says advanced talks taking place. Dealmakers have put forward two companies, one a PIF subsidiary and a secondary company unaffiliated. Legalities being explored so as to not conflict with Newcastle. Nothing guaranteed yet, as Spurs has spoken to American companies as well, but discussions are advanced. Senior government figures have been involved in talks. Matt Law, meanwhile, confirmed Tottenham are working towards clinching a lucrative naming rights deal for the stadium. It's been a long time coming, Gary, and for me, something I thought the club had changed their mind on. I can see the commercial value of Tottenham Hotspur Stadium remaining the name of the ground when it hosts Beyonce, Anthony Joshua in the NFL in the space of a month. How do you feel that this finally seems to be coming to fruition?
I mean, it's long overdue, as we all know. It should have been done a long time ago. Slight concern of where the money might come from, because obviously, they say, hopefully they don't go down the road with the Saudi in terms of having there any conflict with the owners of Newcastle, just purely because of what we're seeing at Palace and what's going on. I just don't want there to be any links with anybody else, just in case something happens down the road. Money talks in football, so Saudi's always going to be linked with anything. America again is been heavily linked. I just think it's very long overdue. I know that they were looking for quite a large amount of money each season, like 25 million originally, that's a year, which seemed quite high in sort of reports. But I'll be interested to see where the money's come from, equally how it is used. At the end of the day, the money needs to be used on the football side of things. The commercial side seems to be ticking over fantastic, and we have to give praise where praise is due. We could all sit here and say the negativities of how things are done on the football pitch, and we all know that, but I think we do need to praise commercially as well. If we can get football side as good as commercial, we're going to be ahead of a football team. And I think this is the first step on that. I've been really impressed with Vinay and the communication that's been coming out of the club. You can tell straight away things are different. videos coming out just with Thomas Frank. Just an easy walk around a training ground goes a long way with fans, being able to understand and get a rapport with Joanne Lang and Thomas Frank, and then Vinay and Daniel Levy doing a video. Those type of things are really good, and I think this is all going in the right direction. But coming back to the original point, is it's long overdue. But I'd be very interested to see where money's coming from, but how well it's used in the playing field.
Connor, I think it's important to mention at the moment that they're just rumors, and they're coming from sources that we can rely on and we know have a track record of being correct, but they are at the moment just rumors. If we include the Morgan Gibbs-White agreement in our spend for this summer, and the deals that people don't like to include them, I mean Matisse Tell, Kevin Danso, Luka Vuskovic, our spend for the summer already lands around the £180 million mark, which is our second highest spend in a single season ever, and it's the 15th of July. Do we have to take this as evidence that something is happening behind the scenes? I mean, let's not forget, we got a Here We Go and an official announcement on 2 deals where they combined £115 million in the space of a few hours last Thursday.
I think so. Look, I think if we weren't talking about Tottenham and we didn't have the 24 years of data of how ENIC typically operate, one could argue, well, this is a team that's 17th that needed to invest in its squad and had Champions League money coming in the following year, and this is the way that they probably should operate. But I think what is atypical for Tottenham is particularly that one with Gibbs-White where you trigger a release clause. That's very un-Daniel Levy-esque. So, I think that implies to me that investment probably is coming. There's also, other signs. I don't think you need to be in the know to sort of do some joined up thinking to say, well, they put Peter Charrington on the board. They then hired Vinay as the CEO. So you've massively improved the credentials of the board. The club itself announced, not with this set of accounts, but with the last set of accounts, that they were looking for investment. So, all in all, I think those things all in conjunction obviously imply that some form of investment or increase in commercial revenue, be it via sponsorships or naming rights, is probably coming down the track. I think, look, we're on the specific one with the stadium naming rights. I mean, I think Gary mentioned it. I always thought we would, even though our stadium's excellent and you've got the NFL and Formula One, go-karting and all of that type of stuff, I always thought 25 million was punchy a year because, you look at, I think they don't, with the other ones, Arsenal with the Emirates, it's sort of bundled in with their shirt sponsor, but I think the price that most people think that is about 10 million a year, and then City's is about 20 million a year. So, that would put us above both of those in terms of stadium naming rights. But obviously, as I say, we do have a fantastic stadium. But so look, that would be great. And we know how important commercial revenue now is for football clubs. It dwarfs match day income, even when you've got a fantastic stadium like ours. And it's bigger than broadcasting revenue now. So I think it's all the right sort of signs. Today it's also been announced that we've hired a consultancy to look at our commercial revenues. The consultancy were individuals that used to work at Man United who have gone off and set up their own private business. So there's lots of signs that they're trying to, again, just further increase those commercial revenues, which obviously we know is important. But I think as football fans, we all want to see that the amount of that is actually reinvested into the playing squad rather than necessarily further property acquisitions or hotels or whatever actually comes through.
And that point you made about the former Man United executives is actually a bit of news that I kind of felt went under the radar a little bit today. It was from Sam Wallace of the Telegraph. He said the leading Man United executives who oversaw soaring commercial revenues and then left after Sir Jim Ratcliffe's major cost-cutting programme have been hired by Daniel Levy. He said while they were not public figures under the previous regime, they drove United's big commercial shirt deals with the likes of TeamViewer and Snapdragon. This in turn helped finance the signings of a series of managers. So again, following on your point, definite evidence that the Tottenham are expecting more money to be flying around the place in the coming weeks, months, and hopefully years. And I think that begs the question then, when you look at the constant turnover that we're seeing in our scouting department, it seems like every 6 months we're having someone leave, someone new come in, and of course Scott Munn is the latest one to feel the wrath of Daniel Levy in that department. Mitch, I'll come to you in this first. Do do you trust that the scouting department that we have now and the system that we have now, again, I know it's just recently changed, so it might not be an easy answer, but do you trust that these are the right ones to be looking to actually getting this money to invest?
Yeah, I don't have too much reason to doubt them as it stands. I think the issue we have is we've been waiting so long for investment through, stadium naming rights and all of this external stuff being linked with Saudi, America, everything else, that I actually think regardless of what we get now, most people will probably be happy because it's better than nothing. And it's probably not the right attitude to have, because of course you want to get the right deal, and that's why it's taken so long for Levy to sort of do this thing. But we've been in that new stadium now 6 years, right? 2019 it opened, which is absolutely crazy to think about. It still doesn't have a name. Daniel Levy come out at the end of the season after sacking Ange saying we want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League. Ultimately, if we want to do that, we need the investment, we need the money to compete with these other teams. And then most importantly, we need to bring the right players into the club to put out onto the pitch. So there's a lot of things that we need to get right, which we haven't got right in recent years, which is why we've seen so much change across the club. Scouting at player levels, now we've got Langer, we've got Fabio Paratici obviously coming back in as well, everybody else. And then, interestingly, with the former Man United guys to look to get other commercial deals over the line, it will be interesting to see how that works. But I mean, we need the money, we need the investment, we need to build a squad capable of competing, and if we can get that, then I think everybody's happy.
The lady that's fronting that's the head of it, that's her business. She was. I read an article earlier that she had actually increased the final year's commercial by 17% for Manchester United, and they still let her go. And then she left, created her own business, which is now with us. And then a number of other executives left, following obviously Sir Jim Ratcliffe sacking them. Let's be fair about it, and they've all basically joined her, and now they're with Tottenham. So if she and her team can increase us commercially by 17% a year, that's a huge increase for us. Looking at shirt deals, we're the 10th richest for a shirt sponsorship in Europe, and we're about 100 million behind Manchester United and Manchester City. So if we could half that gap, that increases money into the team immediately. So there's a lot going on there, and it's a very interesting time.
It is, and King Hoddle raises a good question here, Gary. What is the actual underlying motive for all of this change? And I have felt over the last couple of years that some of the steps that Tottenham have been taking seemed not in a very direct way, but that it was a lot of good things to do to set up for the sale of the football club. And again, over the last few years, there have been whispers here and there that maybe that is what they're building up to. Perhaps Levy stepping back into a reduced or non-football role is just another step in that process to eventually selling the football club. Do you think that's something on the horizon in the near future, Gary?
I think it's difficult. There's always been so much talk about it being sold, and then there's a lot of talk that I've seen as well about the trust that the trust itself is now looked after by someone different. The daughter of Joe Lewis, apparently not the biggest fan of our chairman, and looking to make changes. And then I see Qatar trying to buy him, and there's just so many rumours that it's very difficult to make a judgment, because we see these things a lot. But this summer, since Ange went, this feels completely different to me. Commercially, we seem to be ramping things up. We're making big board changes. We're investing in the team. It's going to be one of two ways, really. Levy's finally decided, we are going to make some investment. There's some money that's come in, or we are looking to sell. And I know that's a silly answer to the question of two possibilities, but it's really difficult at the moment to kind of judge. I think if we get down deeper into the summer, and if we see less and less of Daniel Levy and more of Vinay and more of other people, I think there's something to potentially to read into there. Especially the biggest one for me was when Ange left, that there was nothing from Daniel Levy. There was no, thank you for winning us the trophy or doing whatever you were happy with in a statement. I know he came out in a video and did it, but the statements feel more, feel less rehearsed, because those videos were rehearsed. Clearly, they were produced, and it just, some of those things to me feel different. But like every summer for Spurs, we'll get our hopes up, and most of the time it ends up like it always does. So hopefully this is different.
I'm trying not to get too excited and too carried away with everything that's kind of happening, because like I said, we've been here so many times before, and it's not just with changes of the board, it's not just with investment, it's with transfers. It just seems with every kind of area of the club. Connor, I just want to get your thoughts on that as well. I hope your internet is back with us now. Do you think?
Back, yeah.
Good. Glad to hear it. Do you think the kind of moves that Tottenham have made over the last 5 or 6 years since we moved into the new stadium, with trying to increase the commercial value, getting the concerts, the boxing, increasing the brand of Tottenham Hotspur, do you think it's all shaping up for an inevitable sale by Daniel Levy and ENIC?
I hope so. I think they have taken Tottenham as far as they can take Tottenham with what they're willing to invest themselves, given the competition we have on those types of things. But I'm not sure. I part of me thinks it might suit ENIC to do a sort of Glazer, Jim Ratcliffe type deal, whereby you get someone in as a minority investor who's willing to pump in some cash, so that you don't have to invest cash. You only have to dilute yourself a little bit, so you then get the benefit of that further uplift that you then get, and it takes a bit of the heat off you. If I think about United right now, there's a lot more heat on Jim Ratcliffe than there is on the Glazers, even though the Glazers have operated an absolutely abysmal ownership model throughout their period at United, right? And so obviously Ratcliffe's made some questionable decisions, but certainly more ambition, I think, in terms of actually pumping his own money in, etc. So yeah, that wouldn't shock me either, that they try to do something like that. The problem is, I suppose, is that I think if you're looking at investment from the Middle East, the Middle Eastern owners typically prefer to have full ownership, right? And they want to run things the way they want to run things. So that might be at odds a little bit. But I hope something is coming in those types of things, because I think the stadium sponsorship, or even if that goes into a sort of front of shirt sponsor as well, is one thing, and will be obviously great to get that money in. But I'm not sure that moves the needle enough in terms of if we really want to utilise this great platform we've now got to really compete.
Imagine we finally get the red AIA off the jersey. Imagine that, a Spurs kit with no red. I love it. The away kit there, the white one. Absolutely love it. For our listeners on audio, we are going to take our first break of the show, but stay tuned, because we will be talking about Adam Wharton and an apparent approach from Tottenham in the next part of the show. For those of you watching on YouTube, it's promo time. You can scan the QR code here to nominate Last Word on Spurs for the Football Content Awards 2025. There's been some incredible nights over the last couple of years with Ricky and the team picking up the Best Podcast in Premier League Silver Awards over the last couple of seasons. But of course, now that Tottenham have gone gold, let's make sure that Last Word on Spurs do as well. So you can scan the QR code or head to the link at the top of the description to nominate Last Word on Spurs for whichever awards you fancy. Make sure to nominate Ricky for the influencer one as well, because he won't like that and I'll find it funny. Also, if you are looking for a VPN plan, you can get the best discount on NordVPN by going to nordvpn.com/LWOS. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and you'll help support our podcast. Again, you can scan that QR code or head to the link in the description. But as promised, let's speak about Adam Wharton. We've heard that Spurs are interested in Crystal Palace midfielder Adam Wharton, and may even have made contact with the club to understand the conditions of a deal in the last couple of days. I would say their interest is nothing new. Alistair Gold reported towards the back end of the season that Tottenham did hold that interest, but whether something can advance here is another question entirely. Mitch, do you have any confidence in this one happening this summer?
No, I don't. I really like him, but I think Palace don't want to sell him, which is obviously one thing. And two, they value him very, very highly. Like realistically, 80 to 100 million pound is probably only really just going to get the conversation started with them for what they value him at this summer, at least. So while the interest might be there for Spurs, I know we're talking all about this investment and this cash and bringing all these players in, but that one to me looks a little bit out of reach. I also think it's a bit of a risk as well. Obviously, I know he's a very good player. I know he's English. I know he's got tons of potential. But obviously, 1 year making that step up into the Premier League. I know Palace had a fantastic season, but he also missed quite a bit through injury as well. And it's just a huge investment for a player that probably isn't. I don't know if it's fair of me to say isn't at his best yet, as in, I mean, like he still can be a lot better than what he is. But obviously there's no guarantee that he feels that potential. My personal opinion is I'd much rather spend that sort of money on someone like Carlos Baleba, who is absolutely phenomenal. He's sort of like my number one choice for that position. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what Spurs do with it, because all of the talk seems to be like, around this Wharton deal and how much money it would cost. But then, like at the complete other end of the spectrum, a much cheaper deal for someone like Douglas Luiz or João Paulinho or someone like that. So there's talk of the Richard Rios deal as well over in Brazil. So yeah, I don't think we've actually made our mind up on that number 6 stuff yet, to be honest. And that's maybe a little bit of a concern, considering I think a lot of us would say that's a priority position that we need to sort out this summer. I mean, it's all well and good buying all of these attackers, but we've known for a good year now that we need a real number 6 ball-winning midfielder. But yeah, I mean, if we did spend that money on Adam Wharton, I wouldn't be too upset. It's not my money, but I do struggle to see it happening, particularly this summer. Maybe it's something we revisit in a year or two.
Harry, do you agree with the point there that Mitch made about number 6 being a priority position? I certainly do, and with the reports that we're hearing, Tottenham do as well, and it's a position we're gonna focus on. Do you agree that's a priority position, and how do you see that midfield shaping up next summer? Imagining, let's say, we do get Wharton.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a priority now. I thought it probably was slightly before a winger, but getting Kudus over the line was, especially at the deal they did, I thought it was great. For me, number 6 is definitely one of our main priorities, especially with Bissouma and Bentancur going into the last year of their contracts, and then the players around them are relatively young. For me, I would like to see someone a little bit nasty in a tackle that can break up the play. They don't need to be incredible on the ball. I think someone like Morgan Gibbs-White, and then this might be a surprise for some, but maybe him alongside somebody that's a bit nasty, and Morgan Gibbs-White could be the quarterback that's spraying the passes all over the pitch, with maybe Maddison or 𝐀𝐻 in advance of them. But we definitely need someone that's nasty, that can break up the play quickly. I know João Paulinho did that relatively quite well for Fulham. Douglas Luiz as well, another one we've been heavily linked with. I think both are relatively decent players. I'm not sure if we're really going to get either. I think they're just linked with everybody at the moment, and I think we're just kind of we're falling into that gap, into that. We're falling into that because we're Tottenham and we're active in that marketplace, and I think we're just falling into that. I don't think, for like what Mitch was saying, the lad from Brazil, Richard Rios, I think he'd be great. He'd be very, very good. Again, he's linked with Serie A, so it's difficult. I don't see Adam Wharton coming, like what Mitch was saying. I think financially it's going to be way too much. He's got 4 or 5 years left on his contract. Palace are not going to want to sell him for anything less than a ridiculous amount of money, and I just don't see us doing that. So I think we may end up looking at maybe a cheaper option, but I would like to see somebody that's experienced in the Premier League, that can be that nasty influence. I know he might not have been everybody's favourite, but Pierre Højbjerg, I like that. I like that about him. I think someone next to him that was a bit of a ball player would have helped massively, and I think Morgan Gibbs-White could be that. But yeah, I don't think Wharton's gonna happen.
On that one, Connor, do you agree that it's one that we can maybe just forget about for now?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Wharton, and I think he's got a, really high ceiling, and I think he'll, if I think about other English midfielders particularly, I can absolutely see him in the double pivot with Rice, for England, because I think he can do something that Rice doesn't do particularly well, which is play out of a press and be that sort of deep lying passer. But yeah, I mean, he isn't worth 80 to 100 million pounds right now. That's for sure. I think if obviously it's not in Palace's interest to strike a deal right now, given that they may lose Eze and Gay. So, I think the right price is probably around the 60 million mark, given his potential. But I think we do have to remember when they're talking about sort of 100 million, this is a player that is still, got some development, as much as I love him, and he's not the finished article. So yeah, that price is just ridiculous. But look, I think the yearning for a six amongst Tottenham fans somewhat is warranted, but also I think comes a little bit from the fact that we've just watched Lange's system for a couple of years, where the number 6 was playing a lone 6, isolated in oceans of space, had fullbacks pushing up, and was covering 60 yards on the pitch or something, right? And so I do think, just by nature of Frank becoming manager and having a different, more stable system in place, and more likely playing a double pivot when we play, when we're playing, I think we'll make a bit of a difference anyway. But like the guys, I do want to see us sign someone in that position.
And to a position that is definitely less of a priority. I think someone posted on Twitter last week a full 11 of Tottenham centre backs, which is not a luxury we've had in the past, but reports are suggesting that Tottenham are rivaling Inter Milan to sign Belgian defender Koni de Winter. There's been contact between Genoa and Spurs. The Italian side would be willing to accept £22 million for the international centre-back. That's from Pete Hall. Do we need another centre-back, Mitch? I think it's maybe a bit of an easy answer, but do we need one?
No, not necessarily. What we need is a capable player that can cover Van der Ven if you get injured. So if you're going to go for that centre-back, then that's probably the thinking behind it, is someone who is a left centre back. I'll be honest with you, I don't know loads and loads about De Winter, but the only thing I can think about is whether we lose Van der Ven for a period of the season, because I don't actually think, since he's been in the top flight, he's got through an entire campaign without picking up some kind of issue. So, I mean, to be fair, this sort of deal, I don't necessarily mind it too much, especially if it is like only 20-25 million pounds for a capable backup centre back. Then it goes back to the point I was making earlier about building squad depth. We've got a lot of games to play in the upcoming season, a lot of tough games, obviously being in the Champions League as well. But obviously we don't want to buy for the sake of buying, and we do have to remember that we have a lot of centre-backs at the club. We've got Vuskovic coming into the fray as well. We don't know if he's going to be sent on loan again or brought into the first team fold. I think a lot of people would love to see what he's about, and will do in pre-season. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there. I don't see it as a priority right now, definitely not.
I watch a lot of Serie A, so I've seen quite a lot of him. Serie A is probably one of my favourite, has been since I was a kid when it first came on Channel 4. So I've seen him quite a lot. He's really good. Been very impressed with him last year. He was on loan the season before at Genoa, and then it was made permanent. He could play left or right, left back or right back, as well as through the middle. A lot of people kind of see him like a young Vincent Kompany. I know I've heard that a lot on sort of and things I've read about him from articles and stuff, but I think he's a very good player. If he's available for something like that, he's definitely worth a gamble. However, I think he'll probably end up at Inter Milan. Inter Milan will need to sell because they don't have a lot of money, but I think he'll generally probably end up at Inter Milan. But he is a good player.
That's good to hear. I like Mitch hadn't seen too much of him, so we appreciate that insight, Gary. And on the point you made a second about the number of centre backs Tottenham have, in our first team alone, we already have Christian Romero, Mickey van de Ven, Kevin Danso, Radu Dragusin, Luka Vuskovic, Ben Davis, Ashley Phillips, and of course Kota Takai, who just came in from Kawasaki Frontale, and Archie Gray. He's basically a centre back now with how much he played there last season. So it's definitely a position where we have a lot of cover, but I would agree with the question you raised as well, Mitch. There's one Van de Ven, and he's not exactly a common type of player out there with the incredible pace that he has, but someone who can fit in there a little bit better is. I wouldn't say it's a priority right now. Like we said, number 6 still has to be addressed, and for me, a bit more depth at fullback, more trustworthy depth. But yeah, that in a luxurious world, that's where I think we'd go. Connor, I'm going to come to you first on the latest on Christian Romero, and it looks increasingly likely that Romero will actually stay at Tottenham this summer. So the revolt has come to a very early end. We discussed last week that Atletico Madrid had ended their pursuit of the player, with Tottenham refusing to play ball. Fabrizio Romano has since told us, I expect Christian Romero to probably stay at Tottenham this summer unless something surprising happens. How important is it to keep Romero at the moment, while also kind of accepting that he's 27 years of age and coming into the final 2 years of his contract? So there is a little bit of jeopardy there for Tottenham, but in the immediate future, how important is it to keep the Argentinian?
Yeah, I mean, my view, I know some Spurs fans are, to me, surprisingly split on this, but I do get the point that they raise about availability. But for me, I just don't like the message it ever sends out when you sell players that you don't necessarily want to sell. So, Romero definitely would fall into that category as, one of our best players in the squad, particularly on his day. He's obviously a born winner. So, yeah, look, I'm very happy about him staying. I also thought, to be honest, I thought the money that was being talked about for him from Atletico Madrid, or what they were willing to offer, was pretty derogatory for a centre back of his standard. And to me, I would rather keep him for this season and risk selling him with only 1 year left on his contract, because you're still going to get probably in that summer 35-40 million anyway, right? So to me, it made very, very little sense for us to be entertaining any sort of offer around 50 million euros or whatever was speculated. So yeah, I'm happy he's staying. I hope he can be focused. I hope Frank can get that focus out of him. Obviously, it's a World Cup year, so let's see exactly how that plays out. But to be fair, I mean, look, Romero gets criticised for his availability a lot and focus, but Van de Ven also has massive availability issues, right? And it's probably slightly different reason, but nevertheless he does, and I don't think he gets quite the same criticism that Romero gets. But yeah, look, I'm happy he's staying. I do agree with what the guys were saying. I don't think centre back is a priority for us in the world that Romero stays. But ideally, I would have liked to see someone who could cover left centre back and left back. I didn't really want Ben Davis to stay, or if he was to stay, maybe push him into coaching or something. I don't think he's good enough quality to be filling in the squad anymore. So ideally, I would have liked to see someone who could cover left centre back and left back. But let's see what happens.
Talk there about the kind of pathetic fee that Atletico Madrid were willing to pay for Christian Romero, and I look at the money they have spent in recent years. They've already spent over 60 million euro this summer on Alex Baena, Matteo Ruggeri, and a goalkeeper from Serie A as well, and they're about to sign Thiago Almada too. Last summer it was nearly 200 million that they spent, including a big deal for Julian Alvarez and of course Conor Gallagher, who Tottenham were linked with. Mitch, do you think that they made this decision easy for Tottenham and easy for Daniel Levy, that maybe had they stumped up a bit more of a reasonable offer, that Tottenham may have looked at like I mentioned, the contract situation and consider letting him go?
I genuinely think the Tottenham board, whoever it was that deals with receiving transfer offers, would have laughed at the money that Atletico Madrid are putting on the table. Look, I'm very passionate about Christian Romero. I absolutely adore him, and he's not perfect. And you know, the interviews towards the end of last season are a little bit iffy, but as a player, I love him. I love his commitment when he's on the pitch. And my opinion, that might not be shared by others, is that he is one of the best centre-backs in the world. And if you want to have one of the best centre-backs in the world on your team, you need to pay the money that he's worth. And, you know, Atletico Madrid wanting to offer an initial 55 million euros plus whatever add-ons, like, it's not even touching the surface. For me, I wouldn't be sniffing at any offers below 80 million quid for Christian Romero, just because I think he's so valuable to Spurs. When he's fit and when he's at his best, he makes such an impact to how we play. And I know there's a lot of talk and a lot of rumours about how he maybe doesn't love a club as much as some people think. But, I mean, you saw him after we won the Europa League and in all of the celebrations and stuff like that. He does love the club. And I do genuinely think he is happy to be here. Whether he'll sign a new contract or not is a completely different question. But I don't think he resents being a Tottenham player. So, yeah, I don't think there was any sort of thoughts from Spurs that Atletico Madrid were going to get anywhere near close to signing him, just because it was the fact that they tried to make it out as if we were playing like hard to get, stuff like that. But Romero is a world-class player, in my opinion, and yeah, I don't know why teams think that they can get away with putting in offers that are just way below their value. Maybe they're trying the Real Madrid tactic of getting him to try and force a move away. But yeah, I'm glad he's staying. And I hope that we hit the ground running and it maybe gives his head a wobble that maybe convinces him to sign a new contract. And if he were to sign a new contract, in my opinion, that would be bigger than any of the transfers we could make this summer. That might be a strong opinion, but I think we need to keep him for as long as we can.
Gary, how realistic is that new contract? I definitely have a feeling that him staying this summer just means he's going to leave next summer, and I don't want it to happen. I must say, I think I convinced myself that I wasn't upset about him leaving for the last few months because I was so scared of it happening, and I wanted to protect myself from what I felt was an inevitability. But I have that feeling again about next summer that they're not going to let him into the final year of his contract. And even if you want to put aside the questions about how much he loves the club that certain fans raise, I think you also have to look at that. He'll be 28 years old next summer. He's a World Cup winner. He's a Copa America winner. He, of course, has won the Europa League with Tottenham as well. But a player of his quality, like Mitch said, potentially one of the best centre-backs in the world, he needs to be winning trophies consistently at club level. And he's not going to have that same loyalty to the club that a Harry Kane or a Heung-min Son is going to have because he didn't come here until he was 23, 24. So do you think we are now looking at most likely losing Christian Romero in 2026?
I echo both Mitch and Connor's thoughts as well as yourselves. For me, my question is we don't get that 8 or 9 out of him every week, and that's my biggest concern sometimes. However, when we do, he's unbelievable. Especially if you look at the cup final, he was unreal. He was probably the best player on the pitch. He was sensational. And going into that final, why I was so confident is because we had him in there, and he's a big time player. He wins in cup finals. My concern with the Atletico Madrid deal, obviously the money was a joke. But tell me what Atletico Madrid have won in the last 15 years. They've won 1 La Liga in 15 years. Granted, we've not won the Premier League, but they're not winning trophies. They're not winning things. He may go next summer. I thought this summer he would definitely go, but obviously the reports come out he's not, which is great. But, however, we don't let people run into their final years of contract with a risk of losing them. Daniel Levy always looks to get some resale value, and I think unless he signs a new deal, I think that this is his last season. I would hope that being around Thomas Frank changes his mind. So I think Thomas Frank could get the best out of him. And I think a lot of my concerns anyway was his reliability last season. How do we know for 100% that is him not playing for an injury, and it was just Ange completely putting every player into that final game of the season. Because I remember at one point Mickey van der Ven was having a press conference, and someone asked why you're not playing every week. He said, "Ask the manager." That to me felt like he's fit, he can play, but Ange isn't playing him. Now maybe they were doing the same with Romero as well, and we just put all our eggs into. Well, obviously we did, but we put everything into that final. I'd like to see how he performs under Thomas Frank, and I hope that he'll get better use out of him and get that 8 or 9 rating. I guess every week is what I think he's capable of doing. But I think I agree with Mitch. If he signs a new deal, that is huge for us. That's huge for the players there, because they're seeing a World Cup winner that's going, no, I want to be here. I'm committing myself here. And that also shows a precedent to other players that are looking at Tottenham going, hang on a minute, they've got a World Cup winner there, they've got a Premier League winner there, they've got an FA Cup winner there, half the team have won the Europa League. This might be a place that I want to set up, and that we shouldn't be selling our best people. You know, Harry Kane should never have left, in my opinion. But we had to do those deals, and I don't think that Christian Romero should leave. I think he should commit and stay. He's not going to win anything more at Atletico Madrid, no matter how many 200 millions they spend every summer. I don't see that happening. And then let's go see him win the league of this season, because I've just called it.
I was going to say
12 months is a long time as well, isn't it? I mean, 12 months is a long time in football. So who knows what
you can change a relationship so quickly. And I think that really, I'm so impressed with Thomas Frank at Bournemouth and at Brentford, at the way that he speaks to people and the way he coaches and the way he explains things. And I think that really is going to resonate well with some of these players, because a lot of the stuff that came out last summer or during the season, that Ange wasn't the greatest man, you know, put your arm around the shoulder and things like that. And some people he was, some he wasn't. And I think Thomas Frank is different. I think I'm very excited about what he could potentially bring, and I hope that a relationship can be built very quickly. And you can look at the videos that Spurs put out on the YouTube channel in training. He's all smiles. If he didn't want to be there, he looks like he could be a miserable bloke to deal with, but he looks all smiles in training and laughing and joking. So that's good sign straight away.
Let's jump into the last move that we're going to discuss tonight. Connor, I'll come to you in this one. It's Bissouma, who's been heavily linked with a move away this summer with Fenerbahce, the most prominent suitor at the moment. And Fabrizio Romano has claimed there are no active talks taking place, with the Turkish side focused on other targets. They have just signed Archie Brown, an English defender, ahead of AC Milan. Juventus have also been thrown into the mix for Bissouma by an Italian newspaper. The player is said to want to stay in the Premier League, but when it comes to Tottenham, Connor, is his time up?
Yeah, I think it is. And look, I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you can't force him to go, right? You can sit down with him and tell him he's not going to get, you know, a lot of minutes or whatever else. But at the same time, you know, it's in his interest probably to stay for another year and then, you know, leave and join a new club and get that signing on fee that you get because you don't have a transfer fee to pay. So look, I think it's a really difficult one. And it doesn't sound like he's particularly interested in going to Turkey. So I think and I fear and that he's going to still be here. And I make this point about a lot of our, there's not that many links, to be honest, with outgoings for us, which is a bit of a worry. Not so much in terms of money we need to bring in now, hopefully, given the earlier conversation, but more so just creating squad space, etc., and obviously just not having players around that you don't necessarily want anymore. So that I think I don't know how it's going to play out. I do think his time is up. Obviously, Richarlison is the other one who's been linked with a move away today, I think, with Palmeiras in Brazil, but I can't see that happening for the money they're speculating, even with Palmeiras getting some Club World Cup money. So we'll see. But yeah, I would like Bissouma to go now. I think it's time to move on.
Well, it's not just Bissouma's time that is up. That is all we have time for tonight on Last Word on Spurs. There's over 7,000 of you watching live right now. Thank you, all of you, for the incredible support. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Let's go around the house before we finish up. Mitch, where can these wonderful people find you online?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on. It's been great to chat and with a brilliant panel as well. You guys can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, wherever, just Mitch_Fretton. So, come and say hello. Excuse me. That was awful. Sorry.
Mitch. Gary, thank you very much for joining us as well. Where can everyone find you?
No, I appreciate you having me on. Twitter is probably the best place. Gary R. Ward. I'm on Instagram as well, but Twitter's mostly. If you like European football, Italian football as well, I do talk quite a lot about that. But obviously, most of it is Spurs related. If you want to follow me, please do.
Of the Coney de Winter to Tottenham move materialises, I think that your page is where everyone will want to be. Connor, as well, thank you so much for your time and your insight tonight. Where can everyone find you?
Thanks for having me, Matt, and apologies again about my dodgy internet. But when my internet's working, you can find me on Twitter under @Levynomics1882. A lot of stuff about ENIC and football finance and that type of stuff, and then I do try and join podcasts fairly regularly. So I'm fairly regularly on Grumpy Old Spurs and Spurs Talk Show and Last Word on Spurs, of course.
It's a very common theme. It's a very common theme in the show that when someone starts speaking ill of Daniel Levy, that suddenly there's an internet connection issue. So we are fully convinced that he is somehow sabotaging Last Word on Spurs here. But everyone, please do make sure and go check out our three fantastic guests across social media. Be sure to thank him in the live chat for the time as well. For myself, I will be handing back over to Ricky, who is back from his family holiday tomorrow. So unless we get some big news tomorrow, that is my stint as the stand-in host of Last Word on Spurs done this time. Maybe I'll be back in the future, who knows. Please do follow me on Twitter @MattHayesTHFC. I'm 5 followers away from 20,000, so I actually really want to get that done. So if there's 5 of you in the live chat, I would appreciate a follow over there. But the main thing is to hit that subscribe button here before you leave Last Word on Spurs. Head to that link in the description below to nominate Last Word on Spurs for the best podcast in Premier League at this year's Football Content Awards. But for myself, from Mitch, from Gary, from Connor, thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, come on, you Spurs.